Feel me? Yeah, yeah. She my peanut butter jelly snack, pull it ride, busky, painting. That's my sunshine when it's raining. That's my boo, yeah, yeah. When I'm all alone, she pull through. So when I catch that wave, we gon' move. But then again, we probably won't. Cause I know she like to stay.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Collab Podcast. We have a very special guest today. Our guest today is one that is near and dear to our heart. Rae Ebue began her dance career dancing with us at the Box Dance Studio under Raw Dance Company. Her affinity for dance drew her to join other teams such as Olympian All-Female and Less Than 3. Taking her love for dance and the desire to expand on her skills, Rae participated in the Boogie Zone Utopia internship and sought out solo training through college and community dance studios like Snow Globe, Kinja's Dojo, and Culture Shock SD.
Rae's big heart and caring nature has led her to do a lot of good. When she's not dancing, her profession as a career research scientist takes up most of her time. And as if that isn't already enough, Rae is also the co-founding member of Badass Do-Gooders. And most recently, through her endeavor Pulse Connections, Rae is providing safe spaces for new dancers and dance leaders to connect and utilize their art forms to amplify social issues that they care most about. We are very excited to welcome our very special guest today, Rae. Welcome.
Hello. Wow, I'm sweating. That is such an introduction. Thank you for that.
We go way back. We go way, way back. So let's talk about kind of your dance journey. And, you know, we never got to ask our dancers when they started dancing with us, what brought you into the studio and when did you really start dancing?
Oh, yeah. So I was already dancing like within like 6 months, just like social and street dancing. I was going to Kearney High School at the time, and a lot of my friends were into breaking and popping, locking, tutting. And so I was just like learning whatever they were learning, and I thought it was fun. And so when I moved down to South County, my mom just went to the mall and she was like, "Hey, there's a dance studio. Do you want to go?" And like the first class I ended up taking was like an intermediate hip hop class by E-Man. And like, yeah, from there, I was literally just like taking class for like almost 6 months. And then somebody at Olympian, because that's where I ended up transferring to, was like, "Hey, we're recruiting for like SoCal's Best Dance Crew. Do you want to be on the team?" And I was like, "I don't know anything about dancing. I've been here for like 3 months. I'm just having a good time." But then I ended up doing it. It just really showcased like how much I love dance beyond movement. Because that season was just like, it went from 0 to 100 because I'd never competed before. And then after that, the following season, it was a lot of discussion about like love for dance, like what brought you here, just like dance history and lecture. And that's where I was like, this is way bigger than what I started with. And this is why I love dance. And so no matter like how many things I kept trying, I would just keep coming back to dance.
I love that so much. And I love what you said about dance being so much more than movement because, you know, to the naked eye, that's what people see. They see just movement. But dancers who are immersed in it, it really is so much more to us. It's the connection with other dancers. It's being able to create sort of this family culture with, you know, people that you spend most of your time with. And it's about the music and it's about history and it's about knowledge and there's so many different layers. So I really love that you said that. I want to hear about your experience kind of transitioning from, you know, the box dance studio onto what your next endeavors are, because that's always, you know, you find a place of comfort, you know, and then you decide to kind of move on. And so I just want to hear a little bit about your journey after you left the box.
Yeah, so after the box, I mean, technically I kind of left when I was still in high school. So from there, I joined all female for about a year, and then I took a break from dancing, and then I ended up going to school for another year at like University of San Diego. And I got really involved in the film community, and literally like the first meeting, it was like one of those icebreakers. It was like, what do you like to do? I'm like, oh, I like to dance. And then like literally they pushed me to like one of the kuyas, and they're like, hey, she likes to dance. You should put her on the team. And so I ended up like that first year, like freshman year, I ended up like blocking a set and like helping with transitions for friendship games, and we placed 8th that year, which was there's like if anyone doesn't really know what friendship games is, it's like this huge picnic games between a bunch of Filipino American organizations throughout California and a little bit of like West Coast, like Utah and Arizona. And we all like come to Fullerton, and it's a dance competition on top of competitive. I don't even know how to explain the games because they're just so specific to that to that event, right? But yeah, there's like about like just under 100 teams that compete, and so like 8th place was kind of a big deal. And yeah, I think from there, like after that, I was just like, you know what, like being in teams is not really like where I'm growing. And so I started doing solo training. I did ballet for about 2 years at Southwestern College, and I got injured halfway through. So, and I mean, like, this was like around the time that I had taught at the box too. Like I was technically already injured, but I said yes, I would teach anyway. So it was just probably not the best idea. Don't recommend that for any dancer. If you're injured, please just like sit through your injury and like come back. Your body is really important. But after that, I explored a bunch of studios. I moved to LA to finish college, and because the box wasn't open anymore, I felt very distant from the community. I was like, I don't know what it is to have a home studio anymore. And breaking my fear of going to class by myself and like not knowing anyone, I went to Kinja's Dojo, and I took Justin and what is and I think it's Justin and Saya. I think that was her name. They're part of Culture Shock LA, and I was like, oh my god, Kinja's Dojo. This is where home is. And so I just kept taking class there and like hopping around studios until I finally found Boogie Zone in Torrance, which is where I'm recording this right now, and met a huge family there and did an internship. And yeah, so it's just been a lot of like just self-exploring, like figuring out like what type of genres, because at the box we primarily focused on hip hop and incorporating a little bit of jazz and contemporary. So I didn't really have much like knowledge outside of that. And so like anywhere I could get experience with like popping or especially master classes, because Boogie Zone has like a real like used to have, they probably will like once like COVID starts relieving, but having like these really amazing experiences of like 2 hour long classes that were just like experiences beyond movement. And yeah, it was just like constantly just searching out those classes, those events, those experiences that rejuvenated my love for dance and reminded me why I am doing this when I'm freaking like, you know, stressing out or like not feeling like it's the best thing I should be doing and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and I also really want our listeners to focus on the fact that like you had enough insight and enough self-awareness to say to yourself, a team is not for me. Like I did my time on a team, but I really need to grow as a dancer. And the only way that I can do that is sort of explore on my own and do solo training. And I really love that because I think, especially when you start out younger, you get recruited by your friends or, you know, an older mentor, and they're like, join the team. And you're like, cool, it feels great to be part of something. But I think it takes just, you know, a different perspective to like take a step back and say, okay, like I did my team thing, but I want to try something on my own and I want to explore different avenues that maybe a team can't take me. And I think that that's amazing. So that should be celebrated, listeners. Yeah, Yeah, I think that's really incredible. And I love that you're still dancing. And I want to talk a little bit about some of your, when we were prepping for the episode, we asked you what your dance goals are. And I want to talk a little bit about your personal dance goals and also talk about how achieving, or I guess trying to journey through those goals were affected by the pandemic, because the pandemic really has taken its toll on a lot of us, on a lot of teams, on a lot of personal goals. And so I'm interested to see how that impacted you.
The beginning of COVID was like the weirdest. I mean, that's like a given for everyone, right? Because everything that we were doing before COVID is not what we're like even thinking about doing now. I was still at Boogie Zone, interning. I was still in college. I was still doing like college research and all that stuff. So my goal at the time was just to get as much training and being well-rounded as a mover as possible. And I think what made me shift that literally was COVID, because when it started, it was not even like halfway through the internship. I was only there for like 3 or 4 months. And I mean, I'd been going to the studio for like 2 years, but it was one of those things where once COVID started, I tried to keep up with moving as much as possible by taking Zoom classes, by like being on Instagram and taking those lives and all that stuff. And it didn't last. And not that like my love for dance just stopped. It just came to a point where I was revisiting what I believed in like earlier in college, which I got into a lot of community organizations. I was president of a Filipino org at Southwestern College, and I led a lot of events at that time that had nothing to do with dance. It was just like social change and awareness, that kind of stuff, like history. And as time went on, which is something this like point that I'm about to say, I didn't even recognize until I got really close with Arnel Calvario during his leadership tools for dance leader course, because I was part of the Theta cohort. He said that his mindset like shifted from being a performing dancer to a community organizer. And that's when I was like, oh, I think that's where I am right now. Because I'm just thinking about how I've been dancing for about 10 years. And at no point in time did I really think about like blowing up my social media and teaching at studios. I think early on, my dream was to be an industry dancer because I thought it'd be so cool to be like Josar and like dance with Ariana Grande and Kehlani and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I was like, why? For what? Like I feel like dancers should be more credited now to a point where they don't have to be a backup dancer, that they should be like more, their own artist. And for me, that looks like planning community events and helping organize and building that infrastructure for dancers to use their talents to just amplify things they care about, like causes, or just, shift all the thought that just happened over the last year about like, okay, this is what happened before COVID, and now we had time to think about it. How can we address that today? So I think in short, it's more of like I'm still dancing, but I'm not being very loud about it. I'm just kind of like training and enjoying that and like being part of the community in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting that you say that, because I feel like during COVID, a lot of dancers realized that you don't always have to be moving to love dance. And you don't always have to love dance. Like in my opinion, I feel like dance is such an umbrella term, because dance, you have obviously the art, the movement, but then as you said, you have the community, and then you also have the history behind it. So you don't always have to be moving to make an impact with dance. And like it's super interesting that you say that, because at this day and age, people like dance right now because it's like it looks flashy, it's nice to look at. But when you're building programs and you're building a community that's surrounded like just heavily rooted in the history and the love for dance, that's when really something beautiful comes out of it. And yeah, I love when people talk about community and history. It's just like snaps all the way, snaps all the way.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you both said about that, because I think it is really, you both made such great points about dance being so much more than just flashy posting on Instagram, being out there, putting your movement out there. Yes, that's part of it. We've had an opportunity as we're prepping for the next season, to talk to some other guests. And it's so funny because everyone, I think the pandemic really forced everyone to be in the mindset of like, let's focus on the community. Let's bring it back to basics. Let's, take away all the glitz and glamour of, being out there, and let's just focus on nourishing our community. And I think it's so beautiful that you both made those points. This is the new gen. This is the new gen of dance, ladies and gentlemen. Well, and Rae, so, let's talk about, this is a great transition because, you're focused on the community. And I want to hear, this is one of the major reasons. I mean, obviously we wanted to reconnect with you, but one of the major reasons why we asked you on the podcast is because we want to hear about this new project that you're working on, which sounds amazing. So tell us a little bit about how it got started and, what the mission is of Pulse Kinection.
Okay, to begin with, I'm glad that we're having this conversation about Pulse Kinection now, because if you asked me this like 4 months ago, it would have been a completely different mission. So Pulse Kinection, where do I start? Honestly, I wanted to just build something that bridged the gap between social change and movement, because those are two things I've been passionate about for a really long time. And I was constantly being surrounded by badass do-gooders that knew how to cross over the peak between what they're really good at versus what they really love, to figure out what they should be doing to find what's most fulfilling. And it was one of those things where I had been questioning what I was going to do post-grad for like 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And then like one day it just randomly clicked. Like at the beginning of 2021 this year, hate incidents were being more public on social media from the AAPI community side. And that is something that within the Asian community we knew about since the beginning of 2020, but we weren't being vocal about it. I'm not saying like everyone, I'm saying we as if everyone literally didn't talk about it, but it wasn't as public as it was this year. And I was very emotionally attached to what was happening, because it kind of reminded me how at the beginning of COVID, I wasn't scared to go outside because of a deadly disease. I was scared to go outside because I was worried I was going to be the next person attacked by hate incidents. Sorry, crimes is not the best term to use. And I was like, how can I help? And I immediately thought of just teaching beginner hip hop classes and raising money for a nonprofit, specifically nonprofits, because they are just the best at responding to localized issues in their communities, whether it was like in San Diego or just somewhere. If there was a nonprofit I came across that would resonate with what was happening, I was like, I want to donate any proceeds that come in to these organizations. And I thought it was going to be something that I did for like a month. Like I would just teach a Zoom class like every week for like a month, and then it would be over. Okay, next thing. But I taught the first class, like I announced the concept, and I taught the first class on Zoom a week later to raise money for Hip Hop for Change. And after that, it was a great experience. After that, I got sick, and it wasn't like COVID sick. It was just like I was stressed. There was a lot of things happening in my personal life. Like I didn't know like where Pulse Kinection was going, and it just like added up to, okay, I need to take a break. And so I shifted from doing that project for 1 month to over the course of 3 months. And that was probably like the best move like not only for my mental health, but also for like the growth of Pulse Connection, because it ended up, you know, having more collaborations. I worked with Lauren Ellie. She's a Block LA. I'm sorry, actually, I think she's part of MTA Agency. I worked with Danielle Moulton and Arno Calvario. And I met a bunch of other people, like amazing people along the way that are still wanting to do projects with me. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of like a huge shocker because it was something I just randomly said to my cousin. I was like, I don't want to do this. And she's like, you should. And I was like, maybe I will. And then as I really, really thought about it, because like I had no name, no like real concept of like how it was gonna happen, it just clicked. I was like, okay, I have to do it because this name, Pulse Connection, like really sat with me. And I was like, I mean, it doesn't have to be like my thing forever. It could just be the first thing I ever do. But yeah, like Pulse Connection, like the name itself just came from the idea that our hearts have a pulse. And when we are connected to the community, feel called to respond to it. So it's kind of like that heart connection on top of like kinetics itself is like movement, connecting to the community. So it's just like a huge play on word. Um, but yeah, like I guess like I was just really shocked by how much it grew because I basically every month like hit about 200 per nonprofit, more or less. And yeah, yeah, I mean, like June was like the last event that I held, which there's actually a discussion on solidarity. It was not a movement class. But since then, I'm still like determining the transition into season two, and what that's going to look like. If it's going to be classes, if it's going to be like jams, if it's going to be camps or retreats or something, you know, like there's a lot happening.
Well, there's a lot happening, but there's also a lot of possibility with what you've created. And I think that that's really beautiful because it was very organic. You were just kind of like, and I think that that's how most great things start. You have an idea, you say it out loud to someone, and then that person validates it by saying you should do it. And then you're like, okay, I guess it is a good idea. I guess I should do something with it. And then it kind of just skyrockets from there, and it takes on a life of its own. And I love that you're leaving it open to whatever you feel like it needs to be. And that's really, as opposed to just kind of honing in on one thing, it has to be this, I have to follow these rules. And I think that just is, it's a testament to who you are as a person. And that's really beautiful because I think that is why you're able to do so much good in the community.
Well, I think what's helpful too is when I initially launched Pulse Connection, I knew that before that I was just a very logistical person. Like I needed to know every detail. I needed to plan everything out and just know how it was going to end. And this was the first time where I just trusted. I was like, you know what? Whatever happens is going to happen. And I think it goes back to me being super connected to Badass Do-Gooders because our CBO, Seek, she has this saying that she implanted in my head like over a year ago, where it's just basically trust the process. And that was something that I was like, okay, cool. But I didn't really understand it until like, especially like during COVID, I grew a lot closer to God. And that just helped me, lean back a little bit and be like, this isn't about what I want. This is about what the community needs. And if they're not demanding Pulse Connection, why am I going to make another product? So it was a bit of, testing the waters about what I wanted versus what the community needed. And then from there, kind of taking a break to be like, okay, let's listen again. Let's see what's next.
That's amazing. Yeah, Dylan's giving you snaps. I'm giving you snaps too. That's amazing. Well, and I just, on behalf of everyone in the community, I want to say thank you because I think, as we navigate through coming out of this pandemic, a lot of us, it was a really dark time for a lot of dancers. They didn't feel, what you and Dylan both alluded to is, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's, dance isn't about movement, but I think a lot of people struggled with that. A lot of people didn't know what to do if they couldn't move their body. You know what I mean? And so it just became a really dark time, I think. And everyone that we've talked to on the podcast, we've asked them how it's been affected. And, you know, more often than not, everyone has said, well, it was a really weird time, or it was a really dark time. And so I think it's just really beautiful that you've kind of harnessed that, you know, what could have been negative, but you harnessed it into something really powerful and effective for the community. So I'm incredibly proud of you, and I'm incredibly proud to know you and to say that, you know, we've been part of each other's dance journey. And I'm so happy to be sitting here, not face to face, but Zoom will do. And you know, one of the things that's kind of newer, and actually Devin brought this up, we talked to her last week, and she brought up asking dancers to finish the sentence. And so I'd love to hear you finish the sentence, and that is, dance is. What is dance to you?
Dance is a person to me. That's I don't know if I've already briefly talked about this like in another thing, but I actually did CBT during COVID, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And my therapist had asked me, you know, like, why do you keep coming back to dance after all these things? And I was like, if dance could be a person, like that is it for me. That is life. Like I don't even know how to explain that, because you know, maybe we could probably just relate it to, if you have a passion or a love for something in the world that is creative, and you feel that interconnected to, like, on a spiritual level, like that's how dance is for me. I feel like it saved me through a lot of things, even like before COVID, because I was like already going through a lot of like mental health, like college triggered a lot of things that I did not realize was a problem in my life, or like at least bothered me. And I felt that dance was the best way to alleviate a lot of that. And I didn't realize that, especially with starting off as a hip hop dancer, because a lot of it's like hard hitting and more like powerful and that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I transitioned to exploring like contemporary, or even different forms of different art forms in general, that it can be an emotional experience. And that's when I started exploring and realized that I actually resonate a lot more with like sad music, as far as like freestyling and like choreographing and all of that. And so when I was like at my low points, like even during COVID, like even if it was not like a real dance, like if it was just moving, that was relief. That was comfort, especially during the beginning of COVID, because I was living by myself. And so that was like a weird experience to be like, oh, I cannot see my friends every week. Like I have to, if I go to the grocery store, if I go see them, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks and then, you know, hope that I'm going to be okay. And that drove me insane, if I'm being honest. Because a lot of things are happening on social media, but also like it's hard to take a break when that's the only way to connect with other people. So yeah, like definitely connecting with myself, like connecting, or I should say the integration of the spirituality and physicality of dance is what made me realize that it is a person.
I find that so relatable. Like, I don't know, everything you're saying is just like, it's me agreeing with it and me just like, hell yeah, hell yeah. Like, yeah, for like personally for 220, we like to say dance or 220 is our girl, and we do everything to take care of our girl. And if you give in 100%, she'll give you 100% back. And you know, I love when people talk about the spirituality of dance, because you can talk to any person. Everyone has their own like idol of dance. Like for you and me, like we see dance as a person, But for other people, they see dance as a different thing, and it's such a beautiful thing. I'm just like, wow. Like, I'm kind of just like, I'm going through a spiritual moment right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, let's take it a different direction then. Let's not get too spiritual. So, not that that's a bad thing, but Rae, I'm going to set a timer. We've upped the rapid fire question timer to a minute, and Dylan's going to go through a series. We have new questions for our new season, so we're going to give you a little bit more time. And we always cheat even after the timer stops, and we like to ask questions that we don't get to. So eventually we'll get through most of them, but let's see how many we can get through in a minute. Are you ready, Dylan?
Sounds good.
I am ready.
Okay, Rae, are you ready?
I think so.
All right, on your mark, get set, go.
If you were a wrestler, what would your theme song be?
Probably something EDM. I don't know.
If you're singing karaoke, what song would you pick?
Love Like This, Natasha Bedingfield.
Okay. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Dim sum.
If you're a guest on a late night talk show, who would you invite to be your first guest?
And Dylan O'Brien.
If a movie was made about your life, who would star as you?
Who would star as me? Oh man, I don't know. Ariana Grande. Probably not the best choice, but
Teleporting or being able to fly?
teleporting.
Student or teacher?
Student.
If you had 4 extra hours in a day, what would you do with them?
Sleep.
If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Korea.
Would you eat for breakfast?
That's a good answer. Okay, go ahead, Dylan, ask.
Okay, the rest of that question was, what did you eat for breakfast this morning?
A protein shake and some lemon muffins.
Okay.
It sounds delicious. I want to go back to and give you a chance, because I know you weren't happy with your answer. If you starred in a movie, who would play you? Or if there was a movie written about you, who would play you? And I know you said Ariana Grande, which I love Ariana Grande.
She's not an actor, really.
I know.
Exactly. So is there someone that like you can think of that might be a better replacement for Ariana Grande? It could be a musical.
You know, what is that movie with the guy? I cannot think of her name at all. But she was like in this movie with the guy from Ant-Man, and oh my gosh, I would have to look up the name. I cannot think what her name is right now. It was like she played like this rich lady, and she was like a cook in San Francisco, and she had like this huge empire, and like she loved like this really nerdy guy from Bay Area. It was this Netflix movie, but she's in like all these other movies too. That's just like the one that I like fell in love with her as an actor. That, or maybe
Is it okay, sorry, I'll let you finish. I think I know.
like, I think her name's like, do you know what her name is?
Is it the Netflix movie with the other actor guy, Randall Park?
Yeah.
What's her name? Oh, Ali Wong.
Ali Wong, there you go. I think it'd be so fun if she played me. She's so quirky.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
That's a really good one. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. All right. And then there's a couple more that I did want to ask that are on here. See, I like to cheat. If you could choose one item on your bucket list to do right now, what would it be?
I can't even think of what is on my bucket list right now. That's like the last thing I've been thinking about lately. I mean, I can say something I recently crossed off my bucket list.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, one, going to a rave, and then like two, Gonna solo travel a little bit, so that's been on my bucket list. Yeah.
Where are you going?
Just Washington. I guess I'm like meeting some people out there for like a day or two, but like for the most part, it's like by myself. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of like looking forward to that because like my job is like allowing me to take vacation and support myself kind of thing. Because yeah, like COVID didn't really let me travel after graduation, so I'm like now in that spot where I'm like, if I can safely do it, let's go do it.
That's amazing. Okay, and then one more question. If you could write a book, what would it be about?
Not about myself for sure. I think I think I would like be on the cusp between like a poetry book or something about like the foundations of hip hop, specifically within the Filipino American community.
Love that. I love that. Well, and I would totally read a book about you, but I love those book ideas.
I don't think I'm confident enough to write a book about myself. Like if there's ever going to be a book published about myself, somebody else is going to write it. It's not going to be me. It's not my forte.
Well, and I know that this is not related to dance or any of the projects that you're working on now, but I do want to talk a little bit about what you do in your professional career, and how that came to be, because you actually majored in marine biology and now
Mhm.
you're doing cancer research. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so in college, I actually worked with fish and I did a lot of like RNA research on that. And RNA is just another form of DNA. And it's just having that experience alone in college was like the only reason that I qualified for the job that I work in now. It was one of those things where people are like, oh, like I literally have like zero qualifications on this stuff. I'm not going to apply. But like my mindset was like, I'm going to apply anyways because finding jobs is difficult, so hard. Like I did not work after graduation for like 6 months, but yeah, like having that experience working with RNA extractions in college like led me to this cancer research job. And since then it's been great because I've been learning a lot about just the biotech world, like molecular biology, microbiology. I work with a lot of cells. I work with blood samples, like that kind of stuff. I do a lot of like protein expression and like gene editing. That's mostly what I do, which is all stuff like I did not do in college nor even enjoyed. Like I'm pretty sure I was cusp of failing my genetics and molecular bio classes in college. Uh, but it's fine because like now I remember like 3 months after I got this job, my supervisor was just like, there's like all these people who had like doctorate degrees and stuff that applied for the position that you're in right now. And I was like, why did you pick me then? Like, I don't know anything. And they're like, well, it's supposed to be an entry level job. Like if you have a PhD, apply to be like a full-time scientist, like that kind of stuff. So like I was very fortunate that when I applied for this job, they were looking for somebody to mentor, um, which is great because I don't know crap. But it's really fun. I mean, it gets really difficult because it is client based versus like internal research. In the science world, basically what that means is if it was internal, if I had an interest in a research topic or project, I would pursue that. Versus external, we get clients that have their own research projects and they give them to us and we run the experiments for them. And it could be like we just run the experiments and the data back to them, or it could be like they run the experiment and we run it with them so they can have multiple trials. And so yeah, I like there's like I'm always learning about a new cancer, I'm always learning about a new protein, or just like a new protocol because I'm the type of person that likes to learn, and I guess it's helpful because my boss is always trying to find ways to attract more clients. So if like we get a new machine or if we figure out that one of our current machines like does something that we don't know how to do, we try to figure it out. And yeah, so it's just like a huge learning experience and it's definitely really helpful that the company and my boss are like very lax because it allows me to have the space to do stuff like community work and dance, or even go on vacation. Because she was like, how many vacation days do you have? Like, this was like a couple days ago. And I was like, probably like this much. And she was like, go take vacation. And I was like, why? I was like, I don't need to. I was like, but if you want me to take the whole week off, I will. So yeah, it's really funny. I always tell people about my boss and like my team in general, like how fun they are. Like our group chat, even though like I'm the youngest and the oldest is probably like in early 40s, we all send memes to each other. Like if I lose somebody on the team, like I might find them outside like skateboarding. Like this is like super random stuff. But yeah, it's super helpful. Especially while I'm like trying to figure out if this is something I'm going to do long term or if I'm going to transition into a different career path or even go back to marine bio, because it's comfortable, like financial and just like energy management wise. So
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, that's great. I mean, that sounds like it's helping you have the balance, that you need in your life right now. That's super important. Do you still find the time to dance?
yes and no. I feel like lately, because I haven't been doing as much physical activity as I did before COVID, I've been prioritizing going to the gym a lot more than taking classes, because not um, training my muscles is what led me to injuries a couple years ago. Um, I basically had a knee injury that shifted my kneecap like outwards, and so I had to like work out. Like it was insane, but it was fine because physical therapy is a thing and working out's a thing. But anyways, back to the question. I actually mostly take classes online. I don't know why. Like I'm still like haven't broken my comfort zone about going to a studio in person. Um, yeah, I may or may not start doing that this month. But yeah, like Building Block has been super helpful. YouTube has been super helpful. Um, and even like some of the studios that are open now, they still do classes online, like through Zoom, and that's been helpful. Um, but yeah, I feel like definitely I want to start going to a studio again because like my spaces at home are just not functional for the amount of creativity that I want to explore again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, same. I haven't taken a real class in person in, a really long time. I do mostly online stuff. I know even Dylan was, a little bit apprehensive about going back to in-person rehearsals, and really wanted to make sure. And actually 220 did a really good job about transitioning back to in-person rehearsals. But yeah, it's a weird time. So take the time that you need. I'm just happy that you're still dancing. I see all your posts on Instagram with you like freestyling, and I love it. It makes me happy. Well, thank you so much, Rae. It has truly been a pleasure talking with you today. One last question for you, and we ask this to all of our guests. We'd love to hear your opinion on what's good in the dance community right now.
What is good? Honestly, I think it's the amount of leaders that have revisited their foundations and are elevating any projects that they had already had to the next level. And I think that's like so powerful, especially with, competition slowly starting to open up. Like, I don't know if you were aware, but there was like a competition in San Diego, like just last month. And that was interesting to see. No like bad feelings like against it or anything. I think it was more of like I thought it was interesting that the first dance event back was a competition because of what happened over the last year. But then it's also like really powerful to see like all these studios opening up and like shifting, not just being like a film and post type of thing. Like, Epicenter, which was previously Boogie Zone, they no longer just do dance classes. They also do like all these types of like foundational classes. There's people advocating for history and shifting the beliefs about being an industry dancer and definitely incorporating a lot more of social awareness within the BIPOC community. And so seeing that happen, like as slow as it has been, because it's not something we can even jump into as a community, but it's definitely so heartwarming to see, I think, in short, that people are not just throwing away what happened over the last year and going back to just dancing and being on a team and going to a studio and competing. That they're, even though they're still like going about this, that they're thinking about the emotional and mental aspects of what it means to be a dancer.
Yeah, that's great. That was a great answer. Well, and I just want to say, I'm going to hand it over to Dylan, just to formally wrap it up. But I just want to say it was so good seeing you, even if it was over Zoom. We miss you so much. We miss obviously all the dancers that we became our family at the Box Dance Studio. But it's so amazing to hear everything that you're working on. I'm incredibly proud of you. Please give your mama a hug from us. Tell her we miss her. And it was so lovely to have you on as our guest today.
Yeah, going off and, ditto to what Michelle said, thank you for just having the time just to talk to us, because it's always an experience when we have guests on here. And yeah, truly thank you. And for everyone listening at home, make sure you go follow her on all her socials. We'll probably put it in the description. Go support her community program, because it's what the community needs. It's what dance needs. And yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Actually, when Collab was launched last year, I got so excited about it because it was one of those things where I would listen to an episode and I was like, oh my gosh, I was there. Like, like it was so fun to listen back. It's like super nostalgic, but also it's bringing to light what is happening in the San Diego community, because I feel like LA and the Bay Area is so loud and everyone knows what's going on in those communities, versus San Diego doesn't have that platform yet. So thank you for creating Collab and highlighting what all these San Diego dancers are doing.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot to us.
Feel me? Yeah, see my peanut butter jelly snack, pull it, ride, busky, painting. That's my sunshine when it's raining. That's my boo, yeah. When I'm all alone, she pull through. So when I catch that wave, we gon' move. But then again, we probably won't, cause I know she like to stay at home.